Hi, my name is Martin Wulfhorst. Thank you for watching this video, the first of 2 video introductions to my book, The Orchestral Violinist Companion. This video will tell you what you can find in the book. The second video will tell you how best to work with it, according to your experience, your background, and your career situation. I hope the information in this video will be helpful, both if you are considering buying the book and if you already own it and want to know what to find in the book and where to find it. The orchestral violinist of the 21st century is a well-trained, highly accomplished musician who not only can play his or her instrument extremely well, but also possesses a wide range of special skills and knowledge. Becoming an excellent orchestral violinist means, first, becoming an excellent instrumentalist and musician, and second, mastering special skills and obtaining special knowledge. This is exactly what my book is about. It is a guide for all violinists who want to acquire these special orchestral skills and this special knowledge, or who simply want to improve their orchestral playing and musicianship. I recommend that you approach this task as you would approach any other important and challenging task, that is, systematically. Even if it may seem a bit over-organized at first, follow the simple 5-step scheme that is explained in detail on page 6 of the book and that is applied many times throughout the book. By the way, every time there is a reference in the text to one of the 5 steps, you will see one of the 5 initial letters set in a little box, just as you will see here. Step 1. G for goal. Define your goal. What exactly do you want to accomplish? Step 2. I for information. Gather and process all important information and resources. Step 3. A for assessment. What have you accomplished so far, and what do you still need to accomplish? Step 4. P for planning. Design a precise plan for your strategy and establish a schedule and specific time goals. What exactly do you want to have accomplished 1 month from now, 3 months from now, or 1 year from now? Step 5. S for strategy. Perform the strategy that you have planned while monitoring your progress. You can find a description of this process and helpful suggestions in part 1 of the book. Here in this video, I will explain only the first, perhaps most important step of your training, defining your goals. Your training and development can only be efficient if you know what exactly you need to learn in order to become an excellent orchestral violinist. The challenges you will meet at your job translate into 11 areas of competence. 10 are covered in parts 2 through 11 of the book, and 1 is covered in my other book, The Orchestral String Player's Dictionary, which will be available in the summer of 2013. Let me give you a short overview before looking at each of the 10 sections in detail. Part 2 covers the orchestral mode, that is, a particular mindset, attitude, focus, work process and work style that is specific for and essential to orchestral playing. You might also call it the essence of orchestral playing. Part 3 is devoted to strategies for learning, practicing and improving your sight reading that are specific to orchestral playing. Part 4 is devoted to basic orchestral technique, principles, daily routines, maintenance, and strategies for improving ease and endurance. Part 5 is devoted to bowing technique, sound production, and coordination. Part 6 is devoted to left-hand technique. Part 7 is devoted to pizzicato and other special techniques. Part 8 is devoted to challenges of rhythm and ensemble playing. Part 9 is devoted to notation and performance practice. It covers anything that has to do with decoding and marking your part. One particular aspect of decoding your part that poses a great challenge for many players is understanding foreign terms, expressions, and abbreviations. My book, The Orchestral String Player's Dictionary, includes tables of words, both for memorizing and for reference, and shows a practical way for minimizing the time needed for looking up Italian, German, or French words. Part 10 is devoted to repertoire and style. Finally, Part 11 is devoted to issues of profession and career. Now let's have a closer look at the individual sections of the book. Chapter 1 begins on page Arabic 1. Everything before page 1, that is, the first 22 pages, has Roman page numbers. This includes the table of contents, the lists of illustrations and tables, the preface, which is more or less a summary of everything said in the 2 video introductions, the list of abbreviations and symbols, explanations of the format used in the musical examples, and the chart of bow points. Part 1 includes a short overview of the history of orchestral training from the 18th century until today, an analysis of its deficits, and, as mentioned, a proposal for comprehensive orchestral training. The orchestral mode, explained in Part 2 starting on page 11, can best be experienced and learned by playing in an orchestra. But helping to prepare for it is one of the main purposes of my book. The principles and spirit of the orchestral mode must guide and permeate all aspects of your playing, musicianship, and work, and throughout the book you will find references to it. The orchestral mode can be broken down into 9 golden rules or principles, abbreviated throughout the book with the letters OM and a number in a little box. Orchestral mode principle number 1. Orchestral responsibility, commitment, and respect. Principle number 2. Adapting all elements of playing to the environment. The conductor's gestures and instructions, the playing and instructions of the principals, the playing of the section, and the performance situation, that is, the acoustics, section size, seating arrangement, and so forth. Principle number 3. The 80-20 focus. That is, using at most 80% of your concentration and energy for playing your part, while reserving at least 20% for listening, watching, adjusting, and adapting. Principle number 4. A wide range of technical and musical resources. As an orchestral player, you need to master, for instance, any type of spiccato a conductor might ask for, not just the one or few types with which you are most comfortable. Principle number 5. Push-button technique and flexibility. Because you need to respond on the spot to any request from a conductor or principal, you need to have the full range of your technique at your disposal all the time. Principle number 6. Physical ease, physical endurance, and mental endurance. Because orchestral players are the marathon runners among instrumentalists, ease and endurance are crucial goals of your training. Principle number 7. Accuracy, discipline, and diligence. Because the sloppiness or forgetfulness of an individual player can affect the performance of the entire section or even the entire orchestra, you need to work as precisely and diligently as possible. Principle number 8. Speed and efficiency. Because rehearsal time is precious, you need to work and react quickly. Principle number 9. Prioritization. Knowing what is most important at any given moment of a rehearsal or performance is crucial. These 9 principles may seem commonplace to experienced musicians, but at times not only young players seem to lose sight of them, and it helps to keep reminding yourself of these essential ideas. This is why boxes with the letters OM and a number are inserted in the book wherever you should be aware that one of the principles is referred to. In the chapter on vibrato, for instance, you will find an exercise and an excerpt that allow you to practice endurance. As a reminder that endurance is an essential orchestral mode principle, number 6 to be precise, you will find here the letters OM and the number 6 in a little box. Let's turn to another crucial area of competence discussed in Part 3 starting on page 16, learning, practicing, and sight reading. As an orchestral musician, you will never have enough practicing time. And in the precious little time that you have, you must frequently cope with pieces that pose difficult and unusual challenges, For instance, music that is written without any regard for instrumental comfort, music that is not violinistic, unlike most solo pieces that you have learned. In order to meet such challenges, you need to have a wide range of smart, efficient learning and practicing strategies at your disposal. In order to meet such challenges, you also need to understand thoroughly the process of learning and practicing, and especially the role of the mind in this process, for most of the steps in this process are mental steps. Part 3 will take you systematically through this process. In this description you will find, on the one hand, some standard strategies, for instance, practicing with dotted rhythms or with expanding segments. On the other hand, you will find some ideas that may be unfamiliar to you. I would encourage you to familiarize yourself especially with Gordon's concept of audiation, which I consider crucial for learning and performing orchestral music. To audiate means to hear and comprehend in one's mind the sound of music that is not or may never have been physically present. In simple terms, audiation means to look at a page of music, decode the notation, make sense of it, and imagine how it should sound and feel when you play. All good musicians, and especially all good orchestral musicians, are great at audiating, and to systematically improve your audiation skills is a vital goal. The issues of basic orchestral technique, discussed in Part 4, starting at page 57, include, first, suggestions for optimizing your technique and improving ease and endurance. Second, suggestions for daily routines. Here you will find also a number of scales and arpeggios that are used throughout the book to practice strokes, bowing patterns, harmonics, pizzicato, and so forth. The core of the book is formed by about 250 pages of excerpts. These excerpts are not like the typical excerpts you know. First, the excerpts are provided with fingerings, bowings, metronome markings, suggestions for technical performance or practicing, and comments on style and performance practice. Another difference to the excerpts in traditional collections is the purpose. In traditional excerpt books, the emphasis is on learning certain pieces, especially very challenging pieces or audition repertoire. But in parts 5 through 8 of my book, the emphasis is not on learning pieces, but on learning skills. For each technical or musical challenge that is discussed, you will find typical, mostly short excerpts from one or more pieces, including pieces from the standard repertoire and including quite a number of typical audition excerpts. The first set of skills to be learned in this manner is bowing technique, sound production, including vibrato, and coordination. You'll find this in Part 5, starting at page 79. Among the topics are several general issues: the basic orchestral string sound and the challenge of blending your sound with a section sound, controlling the elements of bowing, that is, bow pressure, speed, and sound point, bow division, articulation, vibrato, and playing very softly. Part 5 also covers a large number of strokes and bowing patterns, from long legato to sautillé to composite patterns of legato and separate notes. For most bow strokes and bowing patterns, you will find explanations, exercises, and excerpts. For instance, for very fast composite patterns of 2 legato notes and 2 bowed-out notes, the book offers you some technical suggestions, exercises based on standard scales or arpeggios, in this case a simple first position scale, and a number of excerpts from the standard repertoire. The other chapters in Part 5 present similar material for other strokes and bowing patterns. An additional chapter on how to choose bowings, labeled Good and Bad Bowings, is found at my website, where it can be downloaded and printed. Part 6, starting in Volume 2 at page 219, includes general discussions of intonation and fingering, numerous, especially tricky left-hand passages, such as the one shown here, And finally, passages with trills, harmonics, and so forth. Pizzicato is an essential orchestral technique. But how many pizzicato passages can you find in the standard excerpt books? There are hardly any, let alone any systematic examples for different types of pizzicato. Part 7, starting at page 275, offers all this. You'll find instructions and examples for regular pizzicato and for various special types of pizzicato, for instance, strumming, shown here, measured arpeggio, two-finger pizzicato, left-hand pizzicato, and so forth. In Part 7 you will also find suggestions for how to produce a nicely ringing, reverberant pizzicato, as opposed to a tinny noise. Rhythm is probably ultimately the single greatest challenge in orchestral playing. How to adapt your rhythm and pacing to the conductor's beat and to the playing of a violin section is a crucial skill that any orchestral player must learn. You can prepare yourself for this formidable challenge by practicing a large variety of rhythmic patterns, alone, with a partner, or in an orchestral repertoire class. Part 8, starting at page 288, presents plenty of material for such work, including ostinato offbeats and ostinato syncopations, tuplets, polyrhythms or cross rhythms, for instance, eighths against triplets, and, as shown here, jazz and Latin rhythms. Part 9, which starts at page 327 and includes over 100 pages, is devoted to orchestral notation and performance practice, and should be interesting to all orchestral string players, not merely violinists, as well as to conductors and composers. Part 9 tells you how to decode your orchestral part in all its aspects and how to mark it up properly. I recommend strongly to use it together with my dictionary, which includes English, Italian, German, and French terms, expressions, and abbreviations found in the standard orchestral repertoire, many of which are missing from all published dictionaries. Starting in the summer of 2013, you will be able to order the book from its website. You will find the link at www.org.info. Part 9 includes individual chapters devoted to each notational aspect of an orchestral part. The aspects range from points of orientation, that is, measure numbers and cues, to divisi plans. Let's have a look at the section on collegno to see what kind of information you can find in Part 9. First, there are explanations of all relevant symbols, terms, and expressions. In this case, an explanation of the difference between collegno battuto and collegno tratto, or their German equivalents. That means beating with the wood of the bow or drawing with the wood of the bow. Again, you may look up all such terms in my dictionary. Second, there are suggestions for marking your part. In this case, adding BATT for battuto to a printed collegno sign that has no attribute. Third, there are explanations of traditional performance practices and suggestions for performance style. In this case, there's a short discussion of how to interpret printed collegno markings that lack the specifications battuto or tratto. You will also find suggestions for modifying collegno technique so that the pitches become more audible. Various aspects of performance are discussed in this manner in Part 9, always illustrated by means of copious excerpts. The last two chapters of Part 9 can be found at my website as downloads. First, there's a chapter on divisi plans. Second, there's a chapter on misprints in orchestral parts. Let me add another short comment about what you will find in Part 9. Don't be surprised if you see some of the same topics in Part 9 that were already explained in Parts 5 or 6. Harmonics, for instance, are discussed both in Chapter 620 and in Chapter 910. In order to understand this overlap, you need to understand the difference between these sections. Parts 5 through 8 cover exclusively technical and musical issues. Questions of notation, performance practice, and markings are omitted here in order not to crowd the text and examples. All these questions are covered in Part 9. Chapter 620, for instance, offers technical exercises and excerpts that involve harmonics, but excludes any question of notation. Chapter 910, by contrast, discusses how harmonics are notated and suggests alternative performances for the same harmonic, but excludes technical explanations or exercises. Part 10 is devoted to building your repertoire and developing a sense of style. In the book, on page 433, you will find only a one-page summary. In order to see the full text of Part 10, go to my website and download and print the 20-odd pages. In the table of contents, by the way, you'll see a little globe next to the page numbers for Part 10. This indicates that this section is found on the website. In Chapter 10.1, I recommend a core repertoire of about 3 dozen orchestral pieces that any comprehensively trained orchestral violinist should know. The core repertoire includes both pieces that are most frequently performed, for instance Stravinsky's Sacre, and pieces that have a particular benefit for any violinist training as an orchestral musician. Though you may never play Wagner's Siegfried, for instance, you should still study the piece, because it sums up all the techniques that you will need for Wagner and for countless other composers who were inspired by him. An essential tool for any orchestral musician is what I call the style grid. Ask any experienced musician about Haydn's symphonies, Verdi's operas, or Bruckner's symphonies. Immediately, a clear picture will come to his or her mind. First, a clear sense of what the music sounds like, in terms of melody, harmony, instrumental colors, form, and so forth. Second, a clear sense of how the music is commonly performed, typical tempos, phrasing, articulations, strokes, timbres, vibrato colors, and different performance philosophies. Third, a clear sense of typical musical and technical challenges and suitable practicing strategies. Challenges for the bow arm, for the left hand, for rhythm and ensemble playing, and so forth. When you add up all this information and all these images and perceptions of major styles that experienced musicians carry in their minds, you come up with what I call the style grid. A comprehensive style grid will be an immensely helpful system of orientation when you learn and perform different repertoire, both familiar and unfamiliar repertoire. For instance, when you practice a Mozart symphony or Verdi opera that you have neither heard nor seen before, you will know immediately how it should sound and be performed and how best to learn it. The style grid is nothing you can acquire overnight. Chapter 10.2 will give you some suggestions for how to build it. One thing that helps towards this end is a sense of how orchestral string writing developed between the 18th and 20th centuries. This is described in Chapter 10.3. Part 11, starting at page 434, is devoted to issues of profession and career. How do I plan my orchestral career? Is the orchestral profession right for me? Am I right for this profession? Do I have the right personality to become an orchestral musician? Which type of orchestra is right for me? What skills do I need if I want to become a concertmaster, or an associate or assistant concertmaster, a second violin principal, a first violin section player, or a second violin section player? How do I prepare for auditions? How do I learn the mechanics of working in an orchestra? What do I need to focus on in a rehearsal or in a performance? How do I collaborate with the conductor or with the other players in my section? How do I cope with the long-term physical and mental stress of orchestral playing? An orchestral violinist can rely on a large number of important resources, which I have attempted to catalog for the first time. These lists are not included in the book, because this would have made it more expensive and harder to handle, but rather on my website. Here you will find lists of website links, selected scores and books that should be part of an orchestral violinist's basic library, marked parts and excerpt collections, periodicals, books, articles, and web documents, recordings, computer software, and equipment. At the website, you will also find, as mentioned, other sections that belong to the book but couldn't be included in the printed version. One chapter from Part 5, 2 chapters from Part 9, the full version of Part 10, and lists of concertmaster solos and audition repertoire. I strongly recommend that you download and print some or all of these files, because this will make your work with the book easier. In addition, you'll find other valuable material at the website. You can download study guides and, eventually, also marked orchestral parts for the choir repertoire. At the website, there's also a link to my string player's dictionary mentioned before. And very importantly, you'll find what I call duplicate downloads. That is, pages that are included both in the book and, for special reasons, also on the website. First, there is a searchable table of contents and a searchable index, both of which are very convenient for looking up pieces or terms quickly. Second, there are 9 pages with excerpts, tables, and charts to which I refer numerous times in the book. For more convenient work with the book, I recommend that you print out these 9 pages and keep them next to the book while you work through it. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it has been helpful, and I wish you lots of success and lots of happiness with your chosen profession.